guys, Dr. Anna Marie here. Welcome to another episode of the Happy Whole You podcast. And I literally was stalking this person online. Not really. I heard my guest speaking on another podcast slash YouTube video. And as I was hearing her talk, I'm like, oh my gosh, I really want to meet this woman. I would love to just have a conversation with her. And today was that day. And I'm so excited to share with you Mariko Frederick, who is a visionary and spiritual healer who helps higher realm beings. And you may be like, higher realm beings, what are you talking about? You guys, we're going to go deep and talk about your unique soul assignment, the light language that we all have that we need to be listening to, and the gifts that we must be stepping into. And she is the creator of Astral Therapy. So I'm excited for her to share. She's going to share a near-death experience with you. So just FYI, she will be talking about that. And we're going to just have a deep discussion about how we're all meant to live a life where we are striving to reach enlightenment. And yeah, we're just here, a soul living in a body. And anyways, I get so giddy about this topic. And so I'm excited that she gets to share her experience with you. And so here we go.
Mariko, thank you for joining me on the Happy Whole You podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to get to know you and talk to you today.
Yes, and I'm so excited for you to share your story with my audience. I overheard you on YouTube, and I thought, after listening, I'm like, I really want to meet this amazing woman and have a conversation with her. And so, I didn't want to be selfish and have that conversation just for myself. I wanted to share it with others.
Oh, I love that. It's so much more fun that way too. I feel like more like gets channeled, like more comes out because it's not just about you and me. So I'm excited.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, let's just jump right in. Can you share with the audience who you are and what you do, and then we'll jump into some other things.
Yeah, so thank you. I'm Mariko Frederick, and I am an author, a speaker. I do retreats, and this all sort of started. So I was practicing. I love your charts behind you, as I mentioned before we started recording, because I used to practice alternative medicine, specifically Chinese medicine. And I loved it. And I just had this like really kind of epic life for like in my 20s. I was a rock climber. I lived in the mountains. I backpacked. I had a practice. Like life was great. I was newly married. Like everything was kind of like really good. And then I died. And it really just stopped everything.
Like you literally died.
I had a near-death experience. I guess I didn't stay dead, but yes, I did. I do remember everything from my heart stopping. I remember taking my last breath, and that came about for two reasons. One, I think it's kind of like, I don't know if anyone's gotten to the bottom of exactly what happened. And I've seen, at this point, well, until I got diagnosed and figured out some stuff, I'd seen 16 doctors and alternative medicine doctors. So the whole story is I got bit by a tick and didn't think a thing of it when I was hiking because I was living in Tahoe, and I got Lyme disease and I didn't know it. And so I felt really bad. I had a headache, my neck hurt. I was just exhausted all the time. And I was 29. So I shouldn't be exhausted for that long. Like get a cold, maybe a week. And so I went to somebody, and I don't go into the details because it triggers people. And I love alternative medicine, so I'm never going to speak badly of it. But this person was practicing without credentials, without a license, using somebody who had a doctor, using their license to get equipment that they had no business using. Used it on me. I ended up getting injured to the point of a near-death experience. Again, it's perfectly safe what was used, except for when you don't know what you're doing and have never been to school. So as you know, that's what caused the near-death experience. And at the time, I was actually home when it happened. I knew something was very wrong, but I think also before I went into alternative medicine, I was in Western and I worked in intensive care. Nurses are notorious, doctors, nurses, techs, we're all notorious for like kind of being in denial and be like, I'm fine, right? So So I was kind of in that, like, I'm fine. I just need to lie down, have some tea, have some water. So we had Chinese herbs, and my husband was kind of brewing something to energize me, and thinking, this is really weird. Cause I felt weird. It wasn't like I hurt in one place. Like, I've had an appendectomy, and I was like, okay, something's wrong. I've had things, but this was like this other weird feeling. So I lied down, and I remember feeling drained more than I can ever express in human words. And like my whole body was like made of lead. And I remember my chest felt like I had like an iron weight sitting on it, like a huge iron weight or an elephant sitting on me. And breathing was so hard. And I remember like inhaling and pushing this weight up and like letting it fall back down, and just doing that over and over again, pushing this weight up, letting it fall, pushing this weight up, letting it fall. And eventually I was like, I think I'll let it fall. And so as I exhaled, I also recognized that this would be my last breath and that I would die. But it was weird because at the same time I was like, but I'm not going to die because there is no death. And I had all of this is happening in like a split second, I think. And so as I exhaled, I remember feeling the life force drain out of my body like a water would drain from a pool, right? It was just like gone to the last drop. And all the pain went away. And I remember feeling, and this is interesting because I've, working in intensive care, I've witnessed quite a few people die. I've even witnessed some people come back. But it was interesting because, and I never got into near-death experiences, and this happened so long ago. It wasn't like we didn't have podcasts back then. I'm sure there was books at the library, but it wasn't like a thing people were really talking about as much.
Yeah.
So and it was such a sacred thing. I remember people sent me blogs and emails about other people's experiences. And at the time I was so sensitive, overwhelmed. It was such a sacred thing. It's like, I couldn't hold more information about somebody else's experience, right? I was just like trying to breathe in and out afterwards. I was just trying to stay in my body, stay alive. And I felt very fragile, thin.
Like when you came back into your body?
And I haven't gotten to the actual NDE, but I'm just saying, like, but it was I never looked into it before, and I didn't really look into it afterwards. I didn't look into it before because it just wasn't my thing.
Yeah.
And I'd seen a lot of people die, like I said, and I knew people came back, and I knew they came back with experiences, but it wasn't something I looked into. And then after having my own experience, I was like, oh, I can't hold more information. So as happening to me, I didn't have a preconceived idea of, oh, this is happening, as somebody might have more information now and recognize if that happened. So I'm feeling this. It's interesting because it's almost like things aren't linear in time anymore, but my breathing stops and there's this buzzing sound I'm hearing, and it goes away. And at the time I was thinking it was my nervous system. That's the only thing I can think of that would buzz in the body like that, because it did sound like electricity. And then when I took my last breath, I remember everything just lit up really bright, like 1,000 suns were shining into my forehead, into my spiritual eye. I remember feeling so familiar and warm, like, this. And I think my personality was still there, because the thought I had was, this is so much better. Breathing's so overrated. It's funny we think we have to do it. Like, that's what's going through my head, right? Like, I mean, technically I'm leaving the body, and I'm also like kind of have the humor, like, oh my God, so much better. Ooh. So I think people are I think oftentimes afraid to die. And I've seen people die in different ways. And so sometimes I understand that there's going to be fear, but in this case, it wasn't. Because I recognize there is no death. So it was just having a spiritual experience, I'd say. I think nobody would be afraid of having an incredible, life-altering, spiritual experience. And that's what death feels like. This incredible spiritual experience where you're waking up to the truth of who you are. And you're like, this is who I am. You're not gonna be afraid of that, right? Unless this is who I am is like a really scary, creepy person. And then you might have some answers, you might have some things to look at later. But audience is not that, so we're not worried about that. So I feel this light, and I kind of go, it's not like I went through a tunnel. That a tunnel thing came later, but it was like being enveloped in this beautiful golden white light, and then finding myself above my body. But I wasn't looking down at my body or the bed or anything. And just remember saying goodbye to everybody, saying goodbye to my husband. He was still brewing, Chinese teas take a long time. He was still in there, like putting together. And I was because I was like, oh, I just need, I can't remember what I needed. And it was loose herbs. So, and I remember saying goodbye to him and recognizing that like he would be okay, that he would go on, he would remarry, he would have a child. It wouldn't be the same as what he and I have, but he would be okay. And we had a wolf dog at the time that was with me on the bed. And I remember saying goodbye to him, my parents, my sister, like my family, my friends, and just kind of like, but it wasn't a goodbye. It was like just infusing them with love and gratitude. Like, I'll see you in a minute. I'm going to step on the other side of this little tiny thin white veil, and I'll see you in a moment. But with so much love and gratitude, because we don't live in linear time once we leave the body. So after I was on the other side of the veil, I guess is when you would say I had the near-death experience. And that's when I got to experience my life review and get some lessons and teachings. So my life review started. And again, I didn't really have I didn't know about life reviews yet, right? This is all new to me. So it was interesting because there was a being there on the other side who it felt like it was their job. It wasn't a family member. But it was like their job to help usher me and teach me and show me. So I got to experience my life from birth until that moment. But it wasn't like every time I brushed my teeth or like drove my car. It was those moments of decision and interaction. Those moments where I was choosing to be soul aligned or ego aligned. And it was all of those moments starting from when I was a little girl. It was interesting because I think like, you and I both have kids, and kids are, they're all over the place, right? They're kids. They're just learning. They're just learning.
Right.
And so they don't know. But it was interesting because my first experience not my first experience, but the one that has stood the time and stays with me was when I was about in kindergarten. And I was with a friend, and we were at my house. We were actually standing at my neighbor's house, and she was laughing at something, and there was some dog prints in the pavement, and she started laughing at it and thought it was cute and funny. And I got really mean. I'm like 4 years old in kindergarten, and I don't know what happened, but I went into like mean girl mode. And I was like telling her that dog was dead and that the people are really sad. I can't remember if the dog was dead or not.
Yeah.
The people are really sad. And how would you like it if you died and everyone laughed at you? Like out of a 4-year-old's mouth, right? I'm like, who even was I? So I'm standing there experiencing this in my life review, and I'm experiencing it through my point of view, but I'm also experiencing it as if I am her, as if I am her. And she's sitting there staring at me going, why is she being so mean to me? We're friends, like almost in tears. And then I'm also experiencing it from God or from universal consciousness point of view. So I'm experiencing it on all three sides, watching this play out. This typically innocent, I'm little. I'm not an adult causing real harm as like like shooting somebody or doing something really, really terrible. But what I learned was that even though I was young, I was still accountable for my thoughts, words, and actions in my life. Now, the cool thing is, oh my God, you're going to appreciate this, especially you. And I always forget to tell this story, so this is kind of fun. So here I am, I'm experiencing it from all three angles, and I didn't stop until she was almost about to cry. And then I stopped, and the only reason I stopped, and I'm going to admit this, it should be embarrassing, but was because I didn't want to get in trouble. Again, totally ego aligned, no heart, no soul involved, just ego, ego, ego. And I'm learning not to use my ego. It doesn't mean I'm not going to be accountable for it. So here's the cool thing. Years later, I'm working in that trauma intensive care unit, and we get a new patient injured. And I go out to tell the family, I was an ICU tech at the time. They're like, go tell the family, we're getting him admitted. I'm like, okay, we're hooking him up, getting him admitted. And I go out, and there she is. And it was her friend or family. Won't disclose too much. And it was her person. And there she is with her mother. And they look up at me, and it was like we know someone here, because it's a terrifying experience when you get a call that, you've got to get to the hospital right now. And I'm like, oh my God. And you're usually there like 5-10 minutes. I was like an hour later. I mean, I'm there, I'm holding her, and I remembered. And I was like, this is my moment. I can make this up to her. The universe is letting me make this up to her now. And so I got to just pour into them. They could ask me any questions. I was probably just anything they wanted to know. I was just kind of their person if they needed something. And the waiting room was filled with their family and friends. And it just felt really good to know the universe does not just punish you. It's not about like, did you learn your lesson? It's like, yes, I learned it. And can we like do that again? Does your daughter ever say, can we do that again? Like mine, if she makes a mistake, she's like, Mommy, can we do that again? I'm like, yes. Like, I think we try that again. Yeah. And so the universe was kind of the same way. So I think that as much as people can have fear or apprehension or some nerves around like, oh my gosh, what happens when we die? Like, just generally try your best to be a good person. And if you mess up, do it again. And if you can't do it again with that person, find someone else to do it again with. I don't care if it's a homeless person that you're walking down the street and you're like, I remember that time I was really not generous. And I got an extra $20 on me right now that I don't need. I just want to give it out of love, not to make up for something, but just because my intuition is saying do this. And so I'm obeying. I'm doing what my intuition is saying to do. So that was like one part of that was the part that really, I think I was brought back to share because it was so poignant for me. And I saw and what I will say is every moment that you are good and helping, even the moments that you don't even notice that you're like, that was kind of normal. I don't know. Doesn't everyone do that? The universe like showers you with so much love and gratitude that you would literally like explode if you tried to have that in your human body right now. And the regret that I felt wasn't from God. It wasn't judgment, because that being, that infinite reality, God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, it was totally impartial and just loving and non-judgmental. It was my judgment. It was me making myself feel bad, going, what are you doing? Stop. And I'm watching it play out. I'm like, no, stop. Oh my God, stop it. And I didn't. And so it's the judgment only comes from you, because you know better or you're about to learn better. So there's nothing to be afraid of on the other side. It's a beautiful experience, and you're going to learn where you were aligned with your soul, aligned with God consciousness, and you're going to learn where you were. And then you're going to move on like 2 seconds later. But there's no time, so it's not even that long. I can feel, but it's not. There, I went into a deeper experience of actually what I saw was actually quite healing. I saw a being, like a silhouette floating above a circle, above a tunnel. So the tunnel wasn't this way. It was like flat, like a disc on the floor. There was no floor, but that's what it felt like. And it was a silhouette. And the silhouette started to move down into this tunnel. And I remember asking this being with me, who's that? And the answer was, it's the part of you that gets attached. And we just stood. I say stood. There's a lot of human words I use that aren't accurate. I saw it. I stood there. I mean, none of that's really accurate. It's an experience because you're not in your human body. So I don't have eyes and stand on. But I experienced watching this silhouette go through the light. And then when it was gone, I moved on to a different part of the experience, which is where I actually got, I call it downloaded. I got new information to bring back. And it was interesting. At the time, it felt like I was meeting these 4 souls, these 4 very enlightened masters, whatever you want to call them, teachers, very high guides. They're not like normal spirit guides. So I don't call people ask, are your spirit guides? I'm like, no, it wasn't that. Something way bigger. There was 4 of them. And they kind of tapped into me, plugged into me. Again, I don't know how to explain it, but we were silent and we're experiencing this sacred moment. Felt like it took a long time. And they were giving me information to bring back. Now, the interesting thing is it was like they were handing me a box that was closed and I couldn't open it. So I had it and I lived with it for years without knowing what happened. So I'm like, okay, that finishes. It's a beautiful, and there's just so much love the whole time too. It's not like as linear as I'm explaining it, but there was just so much love and familiarity. And interestingly enough, gratitude. It's like they're grateful for us. And I'm like, me? This little speck of human tininess?
Yeah.
Like us compared to the vast infinite universe, but we're not. We are infinite souls. So there is gratitude. And after that, I remember just coming into this I think it was actually before that, but realizing there is no Mariko. I was never Mariko. I'm free. I'm me. I am love. I am bliss. I am joy. And I'm not a rock climber. I don't practice Chinese medicine. I'm not certified in anything. I don't backpack. I am none of these things. I don't lift pizza. Like all of the things that you think you love and know, gone. And you are finally free to be you, the soul, the infinite soul. And I'm recognizing this standing. It feels like I'm standing, watching the universe. So there's still separateness in this experience. Yeah. Watching the universe, but experiencing and recognizing that I am love, I am bliss, I am joy. This is who I am, and I could never be anything else. Like, funny me, what was I thinking? What are we thinking? And we are one. All of us are one, so you can't miss anybody because there is no one else. And I'm just experiencing this ever expanding love. And it felt like people have asked, like, how long was that? How long were you there? I'm like, I don't know, like 800 years. Like, there's no time. You're experiencing infinity. So obviously it wasn't 800 years because I would not be here, but it was like, it felt like that. That's the only number I can come up with that feels reasonable. I'm experiencing this experience, in my infinite reality. And all of a sudden I hear this voice saying, it's not your time. You have to go back. And I was like, no, I'm good. No, I'm going to stay. I was like, no. And it comes in what's called a thought wave. So it wasn't necessarily like a human voice speaking. And so I hear or feel thought waves. It's the only explanation I can tell you. It's a wave of thought, but there's no word or sound. And then for me, it's like it was just in me and I know it. And then I can translate to human words. And so it happened so fast and so naturally to me. But there was this, I feel like there also was like a voice of, you have to go back and help people. It's not your time. And again, I was like,
I'm not going.
I'm infinite reality. Like, I can't go back and be who? What are you talking about? 800 years ago? Aren't I a little dusty now? I can't go back.
Oh, man.
Then a third time, you have to go back and help people. It's not your time. And then they explained that everybody has a time to go. And you can't go before or after. It's not your time. You have to go back and help people. And when I understood that it really wasn't my time, that I had longer to work, that I had work to do, then I was really like, okay, I'll do it. Put me back in. And I remember, again, there's still part of me that's like very human. So it's like, I don't know how to do this. How do I do this? Like, I remember trying, like, okay. And then I remember saying, I can't get back in my body. And then it was just like being hurled through space at like light speed, just hurled through space. And it was interesting because I felt like I was being pushed from behind, which is an interesting concept since I didn't feel like I had a body, but maybe I had a light body. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't looking at myself. There was nothing to really see in that sense. But I remember all of a sudden taking a breath and feeling like I had been run over by a train and burned to a crisp all at once. And that breath hurt more than anything. And I remember my first thought was, you have to go to the hospital. It's interesting because, I come from a Western background and Eastern. So I like both. And, when you're having a big trauma, you got to go to the hospital. You get a hired car,
Yeah.
Not
Please send me to the hospital.
Go to a hospital. Do not get acupuncture.
Yeah.
6 months later, whatever, later, but not that day, right? So that was my first thought, my instinct. And they kind of brought me, they didn't like re-kill me, I didn't like die again, but it was like they brought me back into the bliss and the love. And they said, don't use Western medicine. And the message I got from that wasn't that Western medicine is bad. It was that what I was to go through, it wasn't going to work and it may disrupt something. And that wasn't my path. And so I really understood that. And again, the universe had my back, because when I did go see a doctor 5 weeks later, just to make sure there was no permanent damage, because some really scary things were happening to my body, the doctor that I went to had had a near-death experience 8 years prior. And
Oh,
had
wow.
rarely ever met anybody who had one, or had never met. So we sat there talking.
Yeah.
And he was like, I'm not using anything. I'll do some lab tests. I'll do some tests to see, but I'm not ultrasound. I'm not scanning you, because I think we knew we're not going to die, as I put it. I'm like, well, they're not going to let me die, so I'm pretty safe. But, it's like, do I really have to go to the hospital? They just sent me back, and
Right. You're going to be fine.
I had to restart my heart. So I think I'm good. Wasn't intubated. I started breathing again. So you have to have a sense of humor about it, or like and maybe it was my nursing, like my twisted sense of humor that we have.
Yeah.
I was like, whatever, I'm not going to die, so they won't let me. So I felt safe, but I think the doctor also, he kind of had that sick, as we put it, twisted sense of humor of like, well, I mean, where are you going to go?
Right.
That was my near-death experience. I came back, and it was just this, like being in a bubble of sacred light. And I remember my husband was shaking me awake. He had just found me. And I get asked a lot, or sometimes I get trolled online, and they're like, why didn't he start CPR? Well, because when you find somebody who's unconscious, you don't start CPR that second. You shake them and they're awake. That's the point he was at. Some of the comments I get, I'm like, really?
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah. So he had just started shaking me, and he was calling me. And I remember him like kind of moving or slapping my face. And I took a breath, and he was there right next to me. And he was like, where'd you go? And I said, I died. And then we just stood, like we were in bed. We were just lying there in this bubble of light. And our dog was in there too, because he was lying next to me. And from then, it was just a journey, the next 10 years of figuring out what happened. Meanwhile, getting sicker, because I had contracted Lyme disease 3 weeks earlier that eventually went into my brain. I was having mini strokes and absence seizure. I got very sick. So it was a 10-year journey for me to really climb out of the ashes of my old life and reinvent myself, because there was nothing left of me to go back to. Chinese medicine, like, I love it. I keep my boards. Can I practice and remember everything? No, it got wiped out. I had too many mini strokes. I used to be such a good herbalist. Now it's like, I know like just a handful compared, maybe more than a normal person, but compared to what I did.
Yeah.
No. And so I had to reinvent my life, my career, everything. And it was not fun. I was grieving myself. And so harder than death in a lot of ways was coming back and having a complete loss of identity, a complete loss of who I was. The physical body that I was in transformed from crazy fit to like 200 pounds crawling on the floor, or sometimes just unable to walk and talk, and weak and sick very often with no answers. And sometimes being made to feel as if I was making this whole thing up, and doctors telling me it's all in my head. And it eventually was, because it went to my brain. And so, by that time they could see it.
Yeah.
By that time, they were right. But it was a very lonely experience. It wasn't fun. There wasn't like joy. Yes, I was in the bliss still for a long time, many years. I don't think it ever goes away completely, but it was lonely. It was, now I've got to go back and be this person, but she's gone. Barely remember who she was. I don't know who I'm meant to be. You gave me this gift I'm supposed to deliver, and yet I don't have a single word to describe it. It was kind of traumatizing, to be honest.
Yeah. Wow.
The coming back, not the dying.
Yeah. Wow. That's an amazing story. So at what point from you being ill and having this gift that you don't know how to access? You said it was like a box. I think you said it was a box to open it. Did I make that up, or?
No, I mean, symbolically, it wasn't a box, but it felt like a box that I wasn't allowed to open. But I was like, around this box, like it was locked, and I'm like, great, what do I do with this thing?
Yeah. So you're not well. And at what point did you start becoming well and started to open up to see what you were sent back here to do?
I would say it was a good 10 years before I was fully able to think about working consistently part-time.
Mm.
My energy would just plummet. And then, because I'm the least educated person online, by the way. I didn't even know about something called co-infections until like 5 years ago. Someone mentioned on a podcast. And I was like, what's that?
Yeah.
No, that's how I got better. So because my doctor, I got so lucky. She was both a naturopath and a medical doctor. And now they have that integrated, but back then they didn't. Her husband was a neurologist, and they were both from Europe. So they both had licenses in Europe, current licenses, medical licenses. And he was a neurologist here. She's a naturopath here, but they're both MDs from Europe. So they're ordering stuff from Europe that you can't get in America. And as you probably know, some of the stuff there works better without socialized medicine. Like you don't have to take a second round, and it doesn't cost very much, and it just works. So they were ordering some of that for me from, I think, Austria and Switzerland, some of the pharmaceutical companies. And it took a while, but I got better. But before I got better, because I went to her for a year trying to figure it out. And I remember going in there one day, and I clearly had a mini stroke. And I'm like dragging myself in. Somebody drove me there. I think a friend came and picked me up. And then my husband came, and there was a whole thing afterwards because she recognized. But I went in there with slurred speech. And I don't know what I look like, but I had slurred speech, and I was not walking very well. And she said, did you, and she's known me. She knows I'm not crazy. Not making this up. I shouldn't say that, but that's what you feel like. You feel like people think you're crazy.
Yeah.
It's a very lonely feeling. So she said, did you mention a rash? And I'm like, I had mentioned this rash to everyone. I drew pictures of it because I didn't think of taking a picture because we didn't do that back then. Yeah. And all I could do was slur out circled dot. And I barely got that out. And I didn't get to the secondary rash or anything. I just said circled dot. And I was able to kind of do this and draw it and say it was right here. And she was like, oh my God, you have Lyme disease. She didn't say that, but she was like, okay. She's so pleasant. She lays me down, gives me an acupuncture session. She's on the phone getting like things ordered, and like everything's moving. And anyways, brain scans and different things, and medicine's being ordered. And yeah. And then it took, that was 3.5 years after I got bit and after I died. So by then I was
Wow.
sick. So it was like 3.5 years just to get diagnosed and treated, another year of treatments, and then different infections, Hashimoto's, different things that just pop up, in not stable energy. Like I'd have energy and then I'd be in bed for 3 weeks or 2 months, so it was like this inconsistent thing for years, and recognizing I can't go back because I don't remember everything. And then it was a good 10 years. And then I just kept getting stronger and stronger. And then one day, I don't remember how many years ago now, not long, like 3, it's right before my book came out. So my book launched, what is it, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago? Something like that. See, this is like linear time stuff.
Yeah.
It was my daughter came home, and then like 5 months later, my book published. So at some point before she came home, and again, I can't remember if it was like a year or what, it was August before she came home, and she's been home 3 years. So it was the August before that, I got a download of all the information. It's what I call the 4 soul archetypes, and it's how to live and work in alignment with your soul and your gifts, and so that you're working alongside your gifts and through your gifts, and not parallel to your purpose. So there's a quiz on my website, and you can figure out which soul archetype is most activated in you. And so that's a lot of what I brought. It's in my book, along with my story. This is actually why I came back when they said, remember who you are, go back and help people. I knew what they were saying. I knew it, and I was really resistant, because it sounds like, oh, well, just remember who you are as a soul. Yeah, that, absolutely. It was actually that I stayed conscious in between my last life and this one. And I thought everyone did. I didn't know it was not normal until someone told me when I was 19. But I thought everybody remembered everything between their lifetimes. And I thought everybody remembered everything about their last lifetime. Because that was like, when I think of like, people are like, what's your earliest memory? It's not childhood. It's actually my last life. Interestingly enough, I just found out I was going to die. And it was me processing that moment, going through the death experience all the way, no near death there, and going through that life review, which was interesting. And this is, I think, why I have such a fire in me about people living the assignment on their soul and living from their intuition and listening to their intuition. And when something tells you, when you feel your soul tell you, you got to do this, like do it now. When I died in that last life, in my experience, they showed me what I could have done, who I would have been had I lived in alignment with my soul, had I lived every day listening to my intuition. And this was hundreds, if not 1,000 years ago. And I kept saying no. So I want to be really clear. It's not like they told me to do it once and I said no. I mean, this was like all the time. I knew I was meant to listen to my intuition, but I was so successful doing it my way. And I was like, no, I'm good, right? And I didn't want to do it. So it's not like they asked me to live the assignment on my soul and I had no idea what it was and then I died. No, I knew. I said no repeatedly every day, as many times a day as you asked me. The answer was no, emphatically no. So then I get to I get to my death experience. I get to my life review, and they showed me what my life would have been like had I lived from my intuition, had I lived the full assignment on my soul. So my answer was, oh my gosh, I didn't know. I'm sorry. Put me back in. I'll do it. Put me back in. Like, give me a near-death experience. Put me back in. And they said, we can't. You died. And you'll never be that person again. It's too late. And that's what I live with every day. And I don't want anyone to live with that. That is a deep regret that does not go away. And I think that's why I have such a fire in me to get people to live the assignment on their soul, to live their purpose, to do what their intuition's telling them, because it's never wrong. And we overcomplicate it. We get so in our human, we act so human. We're not, we're souls. We're the infinite souls. And we act like these little humans that are limited. No, we can't, I don't know. Like, get over yourself and go do what you're here to do, because it's not about you.
Yeah.
And so that experience, was also incredibly, I don't know that I'm ever going to process all of that, right? But what I do is I made something of it, and I've made a business, and I help people. And so from there, I went into the higher realms, the astral realm, the causal realm, oneness consciousness. I know we don't have a lot of time because that would take a long time. And then the next thing I knew, I remember feeling just one with bliss and feeling like I was in oneness consciousness. I was in this beautiful, ever expanding ocean of God's light, God's love. And I was it. I wasn't separate anymore. It's just, I am, right? We all are. And I remember having the thought, I feel so much love. Like, I am love. I feel so much love. And then I remember thinking, oh, that's interesting. I feel love, which is I separate than the love. I feel love. And it was dawning on me that I feel love here. And then I was like, I have a body. I'm back.
Oh, wow.
I was a baby. I was a baby in my crib in this life. And so when people ask me, like, what was your journey? The near death, I think, is the prompt, the calling me out of saying, hey, Mariko, you have a lot more to do and you've been avoiding it again. We're going to do this again? Or are you going to live the assignment on your soul? And I do think it took me getting injured and having this whole thing happen in order for me to have that experience to go, okay, nothing's going to stop me. Of course, then I come back and it does stop me because I'm sick for 10 years, which was, but you just don't give up, right? You just have to keep looking for the answers and find a good naturopath and a good doctor and a good team of people that support you. I mean, to this day, I was talking to you before, I still have to go to my naturopath in order to maintain my energy, my health. Like, it's part of my care routine now. Yeah.
Oh, well, there's so many things, a couple of things that stood out to me. And then one other thing I wanted, and my brain's all over the place because I have like so many things I wanted to ask, but was it, I don't know if it was you that I heard you say this, because I was like, I thought everybody experienced this. I remember when I was little, I would see energy moving through the room.
Yeah, the light.
The light.
Yeah, the lights. It's like TV fuzz, if you're old enough to remember analog TV. Or some of them are lights. Yeah. I still see those.
Is that not normal?
Apparently not. I've met a couple of people, because I started talking about that on podcasts. I think I was on Alex Ferrari, and he's got a rather large following.
I think that's what I was.
Yeah, he's got a crazy amount of followers. It's amazing. I'm so happy for him. He's such a kind, like, oh my God, talking about alignment with your soul. That guy, amazing soul. So it's like he needs to be, out there. But yeah, I remember talking about seeing the lights as a baby and a young child, and to this day, if it gets dark, I see thousands of lights. They used to be bigger, and yeah, I've actually, again, I didn't know it wasn't normal, so I grabbed one of the lights and I pulled what I now know is called an astrally projected object out of the light.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it was you that said that, because I remember I was like, oh, I thought that was just normal. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, because I wake up and I see things all the time.
yeah.
I had my sister-in-law before she passed. I woke up, I sat up, and it was the silhouette of her body, and she walked towards me, and it was just quiet and peaceful. And then she walked out of the room.
Oh, she was saying goodbye.
She was, and she died like 2 days later.
Yeah.
And so it's just, there's been quite a few things that have happened in my life since my grandfather passed that are showing up more in my adulthood. But what happened, as I reflect back, when I was younger, I would talk to things.
Mm-hmm.
I would talk to ice cubes. And I remember I got made fun of. I was in the kitchen in our old house, and I got made fun of it. I remember I was like, I am never going to say anything like this again.
Yeah.
And I think that's when my intuition and all of that I put it on the back burner. And then after my grandfather passed, I saw there were these orbs on my phone with my camera, even though there were other people that took the same exact photos.
Yeah.
And it was like going across, and I was like, oh, and then things started to unlock for me there. So interesting. But so a couple things that you said, and I wanted to just get your thoughts on this. So when you talk about, so an average person is like, oh, intuition, like, what is intuition? Like, because intuition, in my opinion, for me, it seems like it's like this subtle automatic knowing before that analytical mind starts telling me other things. But how would you describe it if someone's like not listening to their intuition? Like, how do they tap into that?
I think, okay, so first, because your audience is interested in health, get healthy, get clear, put the bad habits down, stop smoking, stop drinking, stop eating crappy foods. You're not going to have an intuition, hitting the drive-through, drinking alcohol, smoking, whatever. You have to be a clear vessel, clear enough. Don't be perfect. Come on. You're human. Eat the pizza, eat the thing, whatever, but in general, get healthy. You cannot have, you can, because I'm intuitive even when I wasn't healthy, but you're going to have so much more clarity when your physical body is as clear as you can make it. Again, you don't have to be perfect because you're going to fall back. So I would say moderation plus 10 of health, right? And be moderate according to today's standards, because today's standards are pretty low. But moderation, and then talk to your healer, talk to your naturopath, talk to somebody who knows more than you. Get in the room with someone who's smarter than you with health, right? Because you'll stay healthier. Clear your vessel, do a cleanse, whatever that means to you. Drink water. Oh my God, keep it simple, right? Just please. If you're not going to go to get an IV, drink some water. It doesn't have to be this big thing, but clear your vessel, vegetables, fruits, clean vessel, water, clean. If you eat meats, clean meats. Not the drive-through stuff. Not everything has to be organic, pasture raised if you can't afford that. But come on, you know what that means. We all know what that means. So, yeah. Okay. First step, clean. Second step, once you're clear, or let's say that a lot of your audience is, because they know how to do cleanses, or they're following somebody who with, like you, who has some wisdom to share around, how to stay healthy. So you have a clear vessel. From there, there's a couple things you can do. One, you can go to an energy healer and make sure that your energy is clear. Not necessarily, because you can also go out in nature, right? We are mammals. Believe it or not, we are animals, right? We forget this. The more in nature that we are, the higher our frequency becomes. Naturally, you don't have to do anything. Well, okay, you cannot do some things, like don't bring the beer to camp.
Yeah.
Right. Again, health. So go out in nature, do a detox as far as your sensory detox. Turn the news, the TV, the phone, turn all that off. Get out in nature. watch how after a few days your vibration rises, whether you're camping or renting a cabin or whatever that means to you, or just going on day hikes every day. That will raise your frequency. The higher your frequency, the more in tune you're going to be to listen to yourself. Your soul is your intuition. What is the intuition? It is your soul speaking truth to you. So one of the things I love teaching people when they're like, how do I activate my intuition? How do I remember who I am as a soul? Is to simply sit and ask yourself, with your eyes closed if you want, who am I? Who am I? And you do that every day until your soul answers back. Now, they're not going to give you a dissertation about who you are. You're going to feel love. You're going to go, oh, I am bliss, right? I remember now, that's who I am. Because you are not a person doing anything. You are a being. So you're going to feel the beingness that you are through the vessel of your heart and soul. So when you say, who am I? Who am I? Your soul eventually, take away the alcohol, take away the stuff, will answer you back. Now you're dialoguing with your soul, with your intuition. Now, how does that affect you? Walk by a homeless person or a homeless family and watch how your mind, your first heart, I need to give them money. And then the analytical mind, no, I don't. And you keep walking. That, you need to give that, it be $1. It's not about money with homeless people, but I mean, it is. And it's also about you seeing them and saying, I see you, you are human, you are here, you are part of it, you matter. Mm-hmm. That's what that 50 cents, that dollar means. It's not just money. It's saying, I won't ignore you. You are valued. Whatever mistakes you made, whatever hardships you've been through, whatever hardships have come your way, even if from your no fault of your own, I see you. Mm-hmm. That's your intuition. Money is the vehicle that we often give attention. So I feel like that happens to a lot of us, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes if it's money we're attached, we ignore it.
Yeah.
Don't.
Yeah. When it's something weird, like we have homeless people here in Bakersfield, and I'll go by someone and I'm just like, send them love.
Yeah.
Like automatically, it's like my heart goes, here you go. Here's a piece of love.
Exactly.
And it's like, I'm always like,
eye contact too. Unless you don't feel safe. Some people have mental things and you maybe shouldn't look at them. But if you feel safe, I find that also just looking at them in the eyes. And I walked by one guy, it was years ago, but he was sitting outside a grocery store. And as I walked by him, he was like, shit. And I heard a snap. And I looked over and his brush broke. And it just, without even thinking, I was like, hey, need another one? He was like, yeah, that'd be great. I was like, cool. So I went in there, got him a bag of stuff. And it was sad. They were like my parents' age at the time and they were homeless. And I was like, that is wrong. Yeah. And it's just those moments of like, hey, I'm heading in. Do you want something? And just with respect, not like, here's $1, you homeless person, but like, hey, buddy, like, what do you need in there? I'm heading in anyways. What can I get you? And there was such a mutual respect. And I think it's those moments. Also, the universe is watching. Be good. Be nice. Fine. But that's also those moments. So it is also like sending love. Because sometimes, I mean, we don't carry cash on us anymore, right? I mean, we're like debit cards and credit. So I rarely have actual money, but it is that moment of like looking them in the eyes and smiling. Hey, how's it going? You know, treat them human. And that goes all over the place. I'm using that because that's so common, unfortunately, right now, especially in California. It happens. It's too common. It's sad. So we want to always be kind to everybody, but that's your intuition. So when your intuition, even if it's like, you should call so-and-so, call them. You should, it can be something, okay, this has happened to you. You're at the airport and your intuition's telling you which stall not to go into. You know what I mean? And then the time that you don't listen, you're like, oh God, I didn't It's your intuition trying to help you out and you didn't
listen. Oh, that's so
moments. And your intuition, like, you're funny, be funny, have humor, keep it light. You know, it doesn't have to be so serious. Like, I'm very spiritual, but I'm not super serious because this world isn't even real. And I know serious things happen. I know bad things happen. Believe me, I have seen it. I've experienced it, been in it. But we can't get stuck in our stories. And when we get too serious, the ego wants to get stuck in our story And that brings us away from the only thing which we are here to do, which is to reach enlightenment, to move into higher states of consciousness and frequency. And if you're stuck in your human story of all the bad things that happened to you or somebody else or the news or the election, it's pulling you away from the only purpose that is really the highest purpose, which is to increase your frequency, your consciousness before you leave this world. It's the only thing you're here to do. That's your purpose. Do that.
I love it. I love it. And you did say, so this is the last thing is, you said, I think you said, don't live parallel to your purpose.
Yeah.
And that was such a good visual for me, because so often I find, and in my own life, I've spent about 10 years just doing good, doing okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could have been doing way better, but it was like I wasn't making that choice when I knew I was close to it, but I wasn't fully in my purpose where I'm at now. And I know that that's constantly changing and evolving. And when you said that don't live parallel to your purpose, I'm like, oh my God, that is literally what I did for a very long time in my life. And I think a lot of us do that because of it's like almost like in the human body, we have this fear of going all in.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's so interesting.
And we're not taught that, are we? I mean, think of like my earliest memory of, because I always remembered the bliss. And I remember somebody asking me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I remember I was just like radiating love, like, oh, you're going to feel this, right? This is what I'm going to be when I grow up. And they asked again, what do you want to be when you grow up? But I was like, blasting them with love again. They didn't feel it. And I'm like, oh my God, they don't feel, that's what I want to be.
Yeah.
No, don't you feel it? This is me. Who am I going to be? Mm-hmm. And then I realized, oh, they don't want me to be me. They want me to do. Who I am is what I do. And somehow, again, I was like 5 years old, the word physicist popped out of my mouth. I heard it, but I said, a physicist. And the room erupted in applaud and love. And I was like, okay, I have to do something in order to get love and attention. I cannot be my soul, be me. So we're conditioned at a very young age through well-meaning, loving people who are conditioned that we have to do something. So nobody asks us, who are you and how do you want to serve? What do you feel like what are your gifts? This is the multiple choice school that you get to go to. And of the schools, you get to do something.
Yeah.
But what about people who are to create something new? Mm-hmm. And there's people that live parallel because the choices of who they are and what they're meant to do aren't, they have to create it. They are the blueprint. They can't go follow one.
Yeah. That parallel is going to stay with me for the rest of my life. I am telling you what. Oh, so good.
You're not living parallel. So you don't know, but people.
I'm not, but it's, but it's like, okay.
Humanity is. They have a 9-to-5 job that they hate. And then they're if they're even aware of their purpose, it's parallel. It's a side gig. It's a hope and dream that they hope to one day, but they know they can't because they're in the human stories, and the human stories tell them why they can't. When really, if they do, they would be happier, they'd be aligned, they'd probably be healthier, and honestly, they would make like way more money.
Way more money.
Way more money.
Yeah.
You want to make a lot of money, live in alignment with your purpose, and serve with love, and just watch how the universe is like, cool.
Yeah. And you are healthier. So I left an 18-year career, and towards the end of that, I started to exhibit autoimmune symptoms. Mm-hmm. I was having pain so bad in my right hip. I knew I was supposed to step into something very different and step forward in my purpose. And I kept dragging my feet because, I was getting paid 6 figures. I had all the benefits, all of the things. Yeah. And when I'm like, I'm doing this. I am walking away. I'm doing this thing. And I did that. It took me less than a year to replace my income. And it's just gone up since then. Yeah. And I have no more autoimmune symptoms. My hip is, I would say, 90% better. And the only time it trips me up is it's there to remind me you're not stepping forward and doing this thing you're supposed to do. And I'm like, oh, okay, hip. Like I listen to my right hip like all the
How
time.
lucky, how blessed that that that's telling you to move in a new direction, to switch, to pivot, because what does the hip do? It's not stuck in one place, it likes to move and pivot. And it's like, hey, you're on the right track, but let's make some turns and pivots here. And I think a lot of people just want to get an injection or take a pill. I think the audience that you have, but in general, that's what we've been taught, is we can just put pain away when pain is here to be like, hey, hi, I'm going to tell you something. Do you want to listen? And you're like, no, I don't have time, because I have to keep moving. And then obviously, getting sick takes a lot of time. So there's so many, I love what you're doing, because you're working with so many levels of where people are at, and you're meeting them where they're at, whether it's like health and they do need to learn how to be healthy and cleanse, or they're ready to step into more light and explore that. It's really cool what you do. I love that you're there's so many layers to you.
Yeah, thank you.
It's really cool.
Thank you for seeing that. All right, Mariko, thank you so much for joining me. And can you share with everyone where they can connect with you, where they can learn about your work, how to maybe work with you? Or I know you have that retreat coming up in November in San Diego. All the things.
So I have a website, Soul Priority, SOUL priority.com. I'm on Instagram at Mariko Frederick, all over social media. I have a YouTube channel, Mariko Frederick TV. We can put the link in there because my first name's not super easy to spell. I actually created my own modality of work called Astral Therapy, where, again, your purpose is the most obvious thing about you. And so I actually created a modality where I could bring people into the higher realms and decondition them, heal them, do what needs to be done, and then bring them back down. They could see and experience who they are as a soul. So I've created my own modality on that. They can go get that for free on my website. And yes, I have a membership where we do astral therapy every month. I have a retreat coming up. This is 2024. So November, I'm doing an in-person retreat in San Diego. This is about finding your purpose, locking it in, opening those gifts that you feel like you're like, it's in here, but I don't know what it is. I can't put a finger on what I'm here. Who am I here to be? I open that wide open. And then the last day is locking in those gifts, getting really secure about them, and then clearing any money wounds, any money blocks, because I want people who are this next level to be able to call in abundance. I don't want you working a side gig. I don't want you struggling. I don't want you parallel to this purpose that's actually more important. So I like to clear the money stuff too, so you could start bringing in more abundance. Because, as much as it's nice to be lofty and be like, oh, I'm the soul, we don't need money. Money's not real, until you need to pay your phone bill.
On Earth it is. In your human body it is.
Yeah, it gets very real. So some people are so spiritual. They're like, oh, money isn't real. I'm like, cool. If you can figure out how to pay for my life without money, please, the wise one, tell me how, because I haven't figured that out yet. So in the meantime, I'm like, let's manifest, because money is created, not earned. And you're not taking away from anybody else when you create more.
Abundant.
It's abundant. Yeah, have as much as you want. The universe honestly doesn't care. If you want to collect pencils or money, the universe is like, what?
Yeah, sure. Here you go.
So this is so fun. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'm really grateful for this time together. Thank you.
Me too. Thank you.